Welcome to episode 66 of the Hard Truth About B2B eCommerce. I'm your co-host Isaiah Bollinger, and I'm here with Tim. It's been a little too long.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a pause. We've both been very busy with work and life. But hi, everyone. It's Timothy Peterson. I am very happy to be back. And let me just pause a second for our sponsor messages so you can hear about how great they are, and we really do appreciate them. Our first sponsor is Punchout2Go. Punchout2Go is a global B2B integration company specializing in connecting commerce business platforms with e-procurement and ERP applications. Punchout2Go's iPaaS technology seamlessly links business applications to automate the flow of purchasing data. With their solution, you can immediately reduce integration complexities for Punchout catalogs, electronic purchase orders, invoices, and other B2B sales order automation documents in order to accelerate business results. Balance is our other sponsor. Balance is a B2B e-commerce payment solution that works well for you and your buyers. It offers a seamless one-click checkout for almost any payment method, including ACH, wire, checks, cards, even terms. It's used by leaders in B2B e-commerce, and it's as easy as buying a shirt from Amazon. Check them out at getbalance.com, book a session, and tell them what your needs are. They are the first dedicated payment platform for B2B e-commerce, 100% tailored to your needs. Thanks again to our sponsor, Balance. And now I would like to introduce Isaiah again to talk about our guest and our topic for today, Daniel Esrig from Lever at lever.io, I believe. I want to make sure everyone gets the site correct. So Isaiah, take it away.
Yeah, so Daniel and I have worked together for a couple of years now. I think it's been a little while. It's probably definitely been over a year. And your new stuff is in the kind of the cool augmented reality, 3D modeling, user experience space with lever.io. But tell us about your background, because you've been in e-commerce for a while now. I think it helps people get kind of perspective on how you got to where this is today. You know.
Sure. Yeah, no, great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me. So I actually got started, the first kind of business that I was involved with after I graduated from college was a sandwich shop, which I started in the Twin Cities. And obviously that had nothing to do with technology, but it was a great opportunity to just kind of like dive into business and figure out how to work with teams and make a good product, right, and learn from the consumer, in order to like try and grow a business. But after a couple of years doing that, I decided that I did not want to be in the restaurant business my whole career. I was kind of sick of working 100-hour weeks, and wanted to do something that I thought could like generate a little more scale. So I took a job at an early startup that was owned by W.W. Grainger called Zorro Tools, outside of Buffalo Grove and outside of Chicago. And the whole point of Zorro was to basically take Grainger's assortment and try and sell it to individual consumers and small businesses. And so you think about what Grainger sells, it's anything from nuts and bolts to huge generators. It's like, they have 1.5 million products, if not more, and they sell to folks like Boeing, right? So like, how do you go and sell that product to small businesses and can kind of compete with the local hardware stores?
Well, I think
so it was a lesson in. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to add, Grainger is the perfect example of kind of a B2B business that has successfully pivoted into e-commerce. And so just for perspective, when was this with Zorro? Because
oh man, this was in 2012 when I joined. I think I was like number 12 or 13. They had just started.
Okay.
Right. But yeah, they were literally trying to figure out how to take their B2B model and bring it to the consumer as well. And so it was a lesson in kind of high volume paid search, marketplaces, email marketing, building out a better e-commerce solution. It was all of those things very, very early on, at least from my perspective, very early on.
Yeah.
And that business grew, crazy. I think we were can't remember how long it was supposed to take us to get to $100 million. And we did it like in a quarter of the time we thought. And it was all because we had awesome products and got it in front of the right eyeballs. Right. And we had good pricing. And so it was easy for people to transact. And so that was kind of my first foray into e-commerce. I followed my wife out to Boston after that experience, so she could do a master's program, and took a job at a really early SaaS business called Klaviyo. It was like, again, 11, 12 people, and they were in the email space. I'm sure if you're in e-commerce, whether B2B or B2C, you've heard Klaviyo's name. They've become a unicorn, an amazing business, driving a huge amount of value for folks.
They're going to go public soon once the markets stop tanking, right? They're probably like, oh, we should go public, and let's wait until this. It might not be the best time right now.
At some point, I'm sure.
And what I would say too, didn't I hear the other day that I think they dominate 85% of all Shopify e-commerce businesses use Klaviyo, something like that.
It's rare to have a Shopify client that doesn't use Klaviyo.
It's astounding. I mean, that's such penetration. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, they've done it off of just creating an awesome product, right? Like, even from the really, really early days when there were just a few hundred customers, that product was just better than anything else out there, right? And what struck me about Klaviyo when I was there is they were taking something that was pretty difficult at the time. I mean, in order to send automated emails, you had to use folks like Bronto or Pardot, like the big, expensive, heavy products. And they made it so that you could, sign up, integrate, start sending a abandoned cart in like 15 minutes. And so when Trey came to me, a co-founder of Lever, with this kind of concept for augmented reality, bringing it to small, medium-sized businesses, what struck me is, could we figure out a way to use the Klaviyo model, this like really easy to get started, lower cost, accessible to everybody type product, but use it to make the product experience more personalized versus messaging. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what we've been after for the last 3 or 4 years is making the shopper's experience with the product more personal, whether it's putting it in their space, whether it's looking at technical details in a more immersive way, whether it's sending a web AR experience that brings a physical product to life in your digital space. All of those products lead to kind of this more immersive, engaging shopping experience, which drives conversion rates on the product page, drives increase in marketing engagement, provides, wholesalers or B2B, sellers with a better experience for their buyers, right? It's all about creating a more fun, exciting, valuable kind of like product experience for folks. And so that's really where we're focused.
Yeah, that's what got me really excited about what you guys do is we had seen the 3D and AR space and kind of that customization space, and everything we found was just so expensive, so difficult to implement. And we found you guys at Lever. It's like, oh, wow, we can just like install this app on Shopify or BigCommerce. And basically, once you have the 3D models, you can be up and running in like a very short period of time. I mean, depends on your theme. And there might be a little customizations to your theme depending on how you build your theme. But in general, it's pretty easy to get up and running.
Yeah. So our goal is to get folks going in 2 weeks, right? Like this doesn't need to be a 6-figure implementation, right? We can get you started and going for a few $100, right? And that I think lets people really try out what is still a very, very new technology to most businesses.
For sure.
So let me ask a couple of quick questions. So, my first familiarity with AR was on the B2C side. I remember, seeing it early on for try on this apparel, put this makeup on. I worked on a project with Sephora about this, the makeup on the face kind of thing, glasses, trying on your eyeglasses. And also things like, I think CB2 and Crate and Barrel were one of the first businesses I saw doing really well with like, picture this sofa in your room, that kind of thing. So those are clearly B2C in general. Tell us like some of the applications maybe that are the easiest to understand for a lot of people in the B2B world.
Sure. I mean, I think we do a fair amount of work in office furniture, for example. Those are often B2B transactions.
Sure.
But it still like solves what is generally the B2C use case, which is I'm going to buy a product and I need to really understand that product before I transact, right? And there's buying physical products can still be like there can be like a fair amount of friction in that. Got to go to a showroom potentially. You gotta walk around and see the product. Even in a showroom where you can see the product there and get a sense for what it's going to look like, but you can't try it in the actual space you're going to use it in, right? And so what we've been trying to do is help people bring or tie the physical experience that they have when they're purchasing products, whether it's on the B2C or B2B side, and then bring that into their actual space so they can really get a sense for how it's going to impact them. So whether you're on the wholesale purchasing side, right, and you have a manufacturer overseas and they're giving you kind of the specifications, or you're going back and forth on how the product is gonna turn out once it's manufactured, being able to like try that product in your space, put it on your desk, put it in your room, walk around it, really get a sense for how it looks, or even like have a really immersive 3D experience where you're able to click on different features and understand kind of all the different components of the product. I think the value is kind of the same for B2B versus B2C, right? It's really about the more I understand a product, the more confidence I have in the product that I'm purchasing, the less friction there is to the transaction getting completed. And so I think that's kind of the core.
Yeah, let me just ask one follow-up, and I can throw it back to Isaiah. That there was a particular B2B scenario that I went through myself. I was working with somebody it was about parts for a lawnmower, right? It's just one of these things that I'm like, how do I find this part? Where do we get this? How does this work? And it was a Toro lawnmower, and all of the images online for this particular part were just, conventional flat, here's one view in the front of this part, right? And the specifications didn't show what any of us needed to know about that piece. But if it were 3D and we could have turned it, right, we could have looked over it, I would have known right away and I would have purchased it. I had to go to a showroom with someone in order to look at this part, in order to know if it was the appropriate part, which is just, amazing, right? I mean, so I'm sure that's something that happens a million times a day for people where this is what they do, right? This is just me as a consumer where I got caught up in that world.
Yeah, and there's a couple other use cases I think are really powerful. One is just like content, enhanced content in general. Manufacturers, right? They create content that they distribute to their retailers, and 3D product visualization or AR content is just another thing that manufacturers should be creating and distributing to their retailers, because their retailers will provide a better experience and they're just going to drive more revenue, right? So that's like another way you use it. I think another really important thing that we don't always talk about enough is there's so much waste in sample products. I mean, you look at apparel companies, shoe companies, they create millions of dollars worth of sample product. They're shipping products all around the world and the country. Sales reps have to take that product and bring it to conferences and places like that.
See if it's going to work. Is this because I'm actually not too familiar with this? Is this because they're trying to test out the market, or what? Can you explain?
Well, let's say you're going to buy a retailer that sells, I don't know, shoes, right?
Yeah.
You've got your salesperson coming to you, bringing all the shoes for the next season, or at least the shoes that they think are going to be in the next season.
Yeah.
Laying them out in front of you, and then you're making your purchasing decision. A lot of times, the product you're seeing isn't even the right thing. It's not the right colors. It's last year's version. We've done a fair amount of work. We did this really early on, where we help businesses reduce the sample content that they had to create, because they can literally just send an AR catalog right? That they can try it in their space. You could bring in one version of one shoe that someone can touch and feel, and then you can see next year's model on top of that shoe with your phone, right? And so you're able to reduce a huge amount of waste, both like physical waste and cost, by using immersive augmented reality technology, 3D product visualization, as a supplement to one sample product versus having to bring 15 sample products.
Yeah.
So
we
that's
still
another
need
good
FOCO. We haven't got FOCO yet, right? I know we're trying to sell them because that was one of the whole points, is they spend so much money on that kind of manufacturing sample process. And I think they said everything is still a clay model, right? They're handmade.
Yeah, right. It's a great, I think like in the manufacturing space, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to reduce costs, work faster, work more effectively, more efficiently with your partners by using really lightweight 3D and augmented reality.
Let me ask you this question. This is maybe a little off topic. What about 3D printing? Do you see a world in which this like manufacturing to AR, 3D modeling to 3D printing can kind of come together, and we could potentially automate some of that more? And
look, I mean, there's no question in my mind that there's a huge amount of value created once a 3D model is created, right? And I mean, we talk about this on the B2C side all the time, that once the 3D model is created, you can use it through your marketing channels, through your website, through an in-store experience, right? But once you've invested in that digital asset, it can be used in any way. And I think it's the same thing on the B2B side, where once a retailer has invested in creating that 3D model, and for the most part, like they've already done it. Like when you manufacture something, you need a CAD file of some kind, right? Sure. Converting that into something that can be used, that's lightweight on a phone, like it's not that hard. We do that all the time. But once that model's created, right, it can be used through manufacturing, through the art development process, through the prototype process, through retailers on the B2C side, right? You can use these models and experiences throughout the both creation and user journey. And so I think, you know, that when businesses start to think that way about augmented reality and 3D, the ROI, which I think people sometimes have trouble justifying just because it's so new. There's just not that much great data out there, or like not a lot of like big data that gives a lot of information on kind of how AR kind of like impacts the entire seller journey. But when you think about creating these models and these experiences and having them kind of like hosted, the ROI is awesome if you think about it throughout the creation process and then into the retailer and the shopper's experience.
My guess is it wouldn't be that much more expensive than doing a high-end photo shoot, right? Let's say you're
it's way less.
Fashion business, you know, I'm thinking ASOS. ASOS is, I think, one of the better ones. I don't know if you guys know ASOS. Mm-hmm. They do a really good job of having like videos. So on their product page, because my wife's like always trying to get her to stop buying stuff from ASOS that she doesn't need, but she's always like looking at ASOS just for fun. Like that's fun for her, right? And it's like there's like these videos of the people like using the product on the product page, and it's so compelling. It's not just a still image. It's like
it's beautifully done.
Yeah,
it really is.
Like, you see them like move around, and to me, like obviously not every product makes it. Like they probably spend a ton of money getting these models and making these videos of every single product they have. So my thought is it's probably cheaper in some cases to do the 3D models at scale than some of that. Like God knows how much they spend on photography and videography on that. You know, who knows? Like we have to talk to ASOS. Get ASOS on the line, Daniel. If we can. Let's try and sell them.
When we think about product photography in general, like it's super expensive, right? And once the photo's taken, like if you change colors of the product, like you got to go take the photos again, right? Yeah. Or if the product is updated a little bit, you got to go take them again. Whereas
that's outdated, yeah,
right. The 3D model creation, right? It's so flexible once you've created these. Now, given a photo is just always going to be a higher resolution, right? Like it's a different experience. But I think the 3D model component is an enhancement and a supplement to product photography. You should be using both, right? As you know, to create a more robust experience for the the purchaser, whoever that is.
Well, one thing I would add too is it's interesting how quickly a lot of this has developed. I mean, I've had a long career in pre-e-commerce and e-commerce, and I've hired a lot of people for photo shoots and video shoots and all this, and it really has gotten so much less expensive to do something that's high tech, that really is that's also much more flexible that you can really use. But what's happened too on the other end is that I was working with a photo studio recently. They're taking pictures of women's fashion accessories for a brand. So the physical object is there and it's going to this photo studio. However, they're only taking, one picture in one color, and then we provide them all of the other Pantone colors, right? And then they'll just do it in all of the others and send it back to us. So that, it's really how that's merging and morphing so quickly. But, they can't do what you're doing though, right? They're just still taking a photo of an object and just changing the color. They're not doing the same thing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And we don't need to go into kind of like lever pricing, but the way we think about this, right, is once the model's created, changing colors, sizes, even certain like components of it is really easy for us. It's super flexible. So we do that all the time. It's very affordable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, can I ask one more question that just came to mind? So real estate, all right, this is again one of these things where I feel like there's real estate, architecture, construction, all this sort of stuff and the applications there. I was going through the process with a family member selling a condo recently, and once the condo was emptied out, they said they would only do virtual stagings, right? They didn't want to do a live staging. They would do virtual stagings. And I went through that whole process where it's like, the condo was cleaned out and it's like, let's see how it looks with Victorian furniture. It's like, it was just absolutely an amazing thing. It's like click of the button with all these pre-styled things that would just pop into, the existing rooms to show potential buyers, and the potential buyer that ended up getting it used that process and raved about it. So I don't know who did it, but it's really something.
You don't know who did the tool. Did they like?
No, but now first time.
They modeled kind of the spaces, and then they would just like populate it.
They had actual photos of the spaces, so it's real life like shoots of the spaces. That they had a professional photographer or videographer come into the actual spaces empty, and then what they did is they provided these empty to potential buyers for virtual tours, and then let them apply whatever sort of style of furniture, like mid-century modern, country, whatever, and just see what it would look like in those styles. And it just filled in the spaces. And so I had never seen anything that exactly like that. It wasn't like put your sofa in this room. It was like another level. I thought that was pretty cool.
It was like populate this entire house with furniture.
Yeah, it just populated it. And so I was wondering, again, I'm bringing this up because, you're the expert, Daniel. This is a sort of thing where it makes me think, wow, business applications, right? I'm trying to create, renovate a whole space, for my factory, let's say, or for my office.
What does our factory look like before actually bringing everything in? Let's like 3D model it out, basically.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. It's a great use case, and we've been doing a fair amount of work kind of in the pop-up store space, where we'll create a digital pop-up store that someone can put in their space. They can walk around, interact with the products, potentially make a purchase right there without having to go into an actual physical store. Mm-hmm. And I could see the same sort of technology being utilized through doing exactly what you're saying. Well, you can actually like build out the prototype of what an assembly line will look like, or what your new office space is going to look like, and you could walk through it and see it and make sure that like things are in a place that makes sense, so that your assembly line is efficient. There's so much opportunity to create those experiences, and with more powerful phones and kind of like better sensors and cameras on those phones, you can start to create more and more and more kind of like unique and robust experiences that anybody can access, right? You don't need an expensive headset to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we don't need like a 3D goggle anymore to do everything with what you guys are doing. It's really accessible.
Good.
Yeah, and that's been our position from the very beginning, is that we are appless, right? We're totally accessible to any consumer as long as you're basically on an iPhone 6s Plus, right? Anything older than that, like you can have access to our experience, whether it's the B2C or the B2B experience.
Are there any B2B companies you've worked with that you've felt like are doing a great job, or anyone that's kind of innovating with this stuff in the B2B space so far that you've seen?
Yeah, so one of the agency partners we work with, they're focused on helping to create better packaging for their customers. And so one of the things that we will do is create engaging experiences that are triggered by the packaging. So the box shows up at your door, you open it up, there's a QR code, you hold your phone over the box, and there's some immersive experience that occurs that both create, like, excites and delights the consumer, or that potentially like helps the consumer put the product together or learn how to use the product, right? And so the experience we're creating, the consumer ends up using, but it's really it's like a B2B type of experience where you're like enhancing the packaging. So the agency that does the packaging is the one that's kind of like using our technology to create this more robust experience for the end consumer that opens the package. So that's one place that we've done a fair amount of work.
Showed me that some of this is on like that dynamic cards or dynamic. It's like almost like a dynamic packaging experience.
Yeah, so we can actually use the packaging artwork to drive the experience. So there can be a QR code in the box, or someone can get a link through an email or a text message or something, right, that triggers the experience. And then when you hold your phone over the actual box or the product itself, you have an immersive experience. You know, we were talking with a business that is in like the Peloton space, for example, right? And again, like the experience that we're providing, the consumer ends up using, but it's kind of being done through kind of like a B2B agency setting where, you know, once you put the new workout equipment in your space, you scan a QR code, you hold your phone over it, and then it tells you how to size the equipment for you, right? Or how to log in to the app so that you can have a better user experience, kind of like off the bat with those products.
It's amazing.
That's really cool.
I think there's just it's so early. I mean, I think that's where the opportunity is. And I think to your point, people are scared to go all in. I know we talked to a couple customers with you about like, hey, let's try and get the manufacturers to get the models and then give it to the retailers. And it feels like obviously a lot of companies haven't quite figured that out. But I feel like if you're a manufacturer right now, let's say you have 5,000 SKUs, if you invested in this and then distributed this content to all your retailers, feels like that could be a huge leg up on your competition, because now all your retailers and distributors have this 3D content that maybe your competitors can't give out to their retailers, you know?
Yeah, and again, like we're built to be scalable. Like, so I think when you look at the other folks in the industry, there's a lot of other, lever type companies focused on different things that are great. Like there's a lot of really good talent, thoughtful ideas in the space. Where we have focused is being scalable, right? So that whether you're selling one product or 15,000 products or 1 million products, right? Like our platform works for you. And so it's about like creating scalability for folks, because if you're selling, 5,000 products or products in variants with different colors, it's not helpful to say, well, like, yeah, I can start a test for a few grand or something, but like to make this work for all my products, it's going to cost me $1 million. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like no one's going to, you can't do that as a business. Right. And so it's all about, how can we help people test, because we want them to test and find the value before they make a huge investment. But then like once they understand the ROI and they're ready to like roll it out to their entire business, it's still doesn't have to be a $500,000 investment, right? It can be something that can get scaled up over time that really like fits into your P&L and makes sense. And I think because we've come from the e-commerce space, right? Both in the SaaS world, Trey, my co-founder, came from the apparel industry, right? And he worked in e-commerce. Like, we understand that businesses can't just like dive in head first and just hope for the best, right? There needs to be the ability to test. There needs to be kind of like understanding the ROI. There needs to be like an end game where you can get to your entire assortment being in AR, but it makes financial sense, right? And I think that there's a few folks in our industry that just like are too expensive. It's like really hard unless you're like Crate and Barrel, right? Like,
yeah, let's not name them, but I know who you're talking about.
There's lots of folks like that, right? That are like really focused on the enterprise. Whereas for us, we're really focused on the Shopify Plus type business and B2B manufacturers who are producing products but want to try this out but can't just drop
BigCommerce as well. I know
BigCommerce as well.
A big splash into B2B, and they have the B2B edition. So I think you'll be seeing a lot more kind of mid-sized, smaller B2B customers going to BigCommerce. So
yeah, they're a great partner of ours that we're working more and more with that I think are thinking about this the right way.
They just, I just saw, they just launched a major B2B 28 multi-site. So their multi-site is coming out in 2 weeks publicly. It's been in beta. So I think a couple people have launched on the beta. I don't know, someone from BigCommerce posted on my LinkedIn. I'll see if I can find it, but you should go after them because I feel like they're a good,
if they're listening, right now.
Yeah, here, let me pull it up for you. One sec. They seem like the perfect kind of client for you guys. So give me a sec. Let's see if I can find it. You know how it is hard to find stuff on LinkedIn.
When you post 15 times a day, it's really hard to find stuff, right? Isn't it?
I try to post once a day, so that's my strategy.
While you're looking for that, I just have a follow-up on something else you brought up, Daniel. One of the things was it was, you were talking about the pop-up shops, right? And the shoppable pop-up shops. So, given all the conversation people are having, right or wrong, about the metaverse and what, creating like retail experiences that are virtual, like how does your vision for the company kind of fit into that? Is it realistic? Is it connected? I mean, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And we've spent a lot of time thinking about that and having conversations internally about the metaverse and what it means to our business. And I think one of the things that we've felt really strongly from the very beginning is we don't want Lever to be in the gimmick space. And sure. Not that the metaverse is necessarily a gimmick. I think it could
be very gimmicky, let's be honest. There's a lot of the NFT metaverse. I mean, how many of these people are going to spend, 20 grand on a picture that ends up being worth like 30 bucks in 3 years? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you, right? Like I struggle at times with kind of the overall concept for the metaverse and what value it's really going to bring, especially from a commercial standpoint or like a retail or B2B standpoint. Mm-hmm. But what I will say is that people are more interested in engaging online and in the digital space. People are looking for ways to cut costs and reduce waste. Businesses are looking for ways to be more efficient. They're looking for ways to use their labor more effectively. And I think a lot of that leads to creating better, more robust digital experiences. And augmented reality, the metaverse, 3D product visualization, it all fits into that. And for us, I think we really think about how can we bring our product or our feature set to the market in unique ways that drive value immediately to the consumer, whether it's a business using it, whether it's a retail experience, whether a shopper is having an immersive experience. We want that experience to feel really valuable. And it could be something where someone is surprised and delighted by an experience that they just got introduced to, whether it's a web AR experience, and that coolness drives a bunch of value because now you remember that brand, right? That's not a gimmick. That's like real. That's tangible. People can measure that. And so when that makes sense, that's a product that we feel strongly about. We also feel like reducing returns for businesses, driving a better conversion rate on the PDP, right? That those are things that drive significant value too. And so our product is focused on that. We also think that manufacturers that can reduce their sample product costs, right, by 25 or 30%, that drives real value. So I think this all is leading to this concept of the metaverse where you're spending more time in a digital space. But I think for us, we try and go use case by use case and say, hey, this is a really valuable experience that we know our customers or new customers it'll drive ROI, and go to market and try to sell our product in those ways, versus just kind of being like, hey, we're in the metaverse, try us out.
Well, I'll just give you one scenario that I've heard about. This is being worked on by a couple folks that I know, and it's kind of interesting. I don't know where it's going to go, but their scenario is that it would use live cameras that are in let's say, a showroom or a retail space. And those live cameras would then be directed by a consumer to a space on a shelf or on a rack, right? So let's say it's Home Depot. I am directing it, and I'm going to a live picture of my Home Depot. But then what happens is the magic comes in of something like what Lever would be providing. I take a product off the shelf, I spin it around in space, I take a good look at it, and then I happen to pop it into my virtual cart and I buy it, right? That's sort of the combination that I find interesting. And I don't know how it's going to actually work, but conceptually, folks are trying to figure that out right now.
Yeah, and I think the key to what you just brought out, Tim, is that it's all about being part of the transaction, right? This is not a standalone experience, and we feel really strongly about this. I mean, this is in all of our marketing content, or if it's not, it should be. And we talk about this every day. Is that we believe that these experiences need to fit into the ecosystem, right? It's not just a static experience on a product page or one QR code that drives to some experience. This needs to be something that happens on your way from an email back to the product page, where you have this engaging experience, but the end result is that you add the product to your cart, right? Or if you're a manufacturer and you're sharing an AR catalog with your wholesale buyers, it's not about just like having a one-off experience in 3D. It has to be part of the entire user journey, whether it's pre-purchase, helping you understand the product, whether it's through some sort of abandoned cart, right, helping to drive conversion, whether it's post-purchase through some sort of engaging experience with the product, helping you, I don't know, like, whether it's like helping you set it up the right way or helping to build a brand experience, right? It's got to be a useful experience that's part of your existing experience, not a standalone feature that maybe someone interacts with once and then they never like see it again.
Yeah, I think that's why e-commerce is so complicated. And I have conversations all the time with customers. Like I had one the other day where they're like, well, we want to like buy this software because it's going to make our SEO better. And I'm like, okay, how? Like, what's it going to do? And you start digging in, they're like, well, it's going to help recommend like better page titles and meta descriptions. And they're trying to, and I'm looking at their keywords. I'm like, give me your top 100 products. Half of them are like LG TV. I'm like, okay, you really think, updating your page title and meta description is going to rank you better for keywords that Best Buy is going to kill you on? Like the results are like Best Buy, Amazon. It's like what they should be doing is like, let's come up with a strategy to make the product experience better. Maybe it's a more 3D experience or a more immersive experience so that their site is a more valuable site for that niche than maybe buying on a Best Buy, right? It's like, because otherwise, there's these battles in e-commerce. I think companies don't realize that if you try and like do the basics, you're just going to fight a losing battle against Amazon or Target, right?
Yeah,
and that's why SaaS companies like Klaviyo have been so successful, right? Is because they're able to create an awesome product that ties into everything else you're doing, right? They'll help you learn about your customer. They'll help you send really timely communication. They'll help you through your SMS and whatever other feature sets they have or continue to put out. but it's part of everything, right? You can't do it without an e-commerce platform. It's not valuable without, a good logistics platform. We feel the same way. Like Lever is valuable on its own, but it becomes way more valuable if you send email through Klaviyo, using abandoned cart, and you tie in the 3D experience to that, or you through your transaction process, you have someone view the product in their space before they finish their purchase to make sure it actually fits, so you don't have to return the rug that was too big. Right? It's all about using this technology in ways that both adds value to the customer journey and like reduces friction, right? And I think we're going to be successful because we want to be part of the ecosystem. We see ourselves as one of the many tools people use to create those better experiences.
So I want to just quickly bring up, I found it. It's I know the BigCommerce launched Ted Baker, but that's more retail. It's not super relevant. They just launched in the day. They just promoted Bullet Group. I've never heard of them, but that's the thing. All these manufacturers, who's ever heard of these? They claim it's headless, multi-language, multi-storefront, native one-page checkout, 28 countries, and it's a manufacturer.
Awesome.
Some
sounds great.
Complicated manufacturing-based products, that are, I see Cat, like they're in the, it looks like it's kind of a supplement to some of these really industrial-based products. But the point is, I think BigCommerce is starting to make a splash in some of that mid-market. There's this gap, right? Like you have the Grangers of the world, right? And they are like super custom now, right? Like they've spent millions on their e-commerce infrastructure and they're pretty much mostly custom, I'm assuming at this point. Maybe they're using like an SAP Hybris, but the average B2B company cannot afford what Granger is doing. So what I like about what BigCommerce is doing, they're building this B2B ecosystem that's relatively affordable for the small, mid-sized B2B company. And then they could tie in a Lever, a Klaviyo, and now they can access this giant ecosystem for a reasonable cost. So it's going to really revolutionize a lot of the B2B stuff that's been a struggle. I mean, you talk to a lot of these companies, they've been burned by so many tech firms in the past because it's just so expensive,
Right, but when you think about like what Shopify and BigCommerce have brought to the table is it lets small, medium-sized businesses like create, test, iterate, go to market in different ways, be creative. And I think what BigCommerce is doing is they're letting folks in the B2B space like take advantage of the same stuff, right? And there's no reason why, if you're in the B2B space, why you wouldn't want to test and iterate and be creative and do all the things that retailers do. And so I think it's awesome to see more of those businesses move to these platforms that really let you be successful.
No, it's exciting. I mean, honestly, between Shopify and BigCommerce, I feel like we're able to handle such a wide variety of use cases now that 5-10 years ago it was like Hybris or Demandware or Magento, and now it's like more and more of those use cases we can handle between BigCommerce and Shopify for a much simpler experience for the businesses doing that. They don't feel as overwhelmed with this like enterprise software,
Definitely.
And it's only going to get better and better, right? So I think it was smart. Is it fair to say you guys are trying to, analogy being almost like the Klaviyo of AR and VR, and that's why you kind of latched on to Shopify and BigCommerce because they're kind of the two platforms paving that way? Or
yeah, I mean, being compared to Klaviyo in any way, right, is quite a compliment. But I think we think about it the same way, right? I think we think about it in a way of like, we want to be accessible to both B2C and B2B businesses. We want it to be affordable. We want it to be something that adds a lot of value, and we want it to be something that's easy, right? We like our art process, right? We need some photos from you. Everybody already has photos on their website. We take those photos and we convert them into 3D models. It's not, you don't need to go find your own contractor to create your art. You don't have to do anything complex, right? We make that process easy. And I think that's that's core to who we are, is like we want this to be something that adds a bunch of value, but doesn't require a huge amount of effort from the retailer or the B2B.
So I'm curious, where do you see B2B going wrong? Do you ever talk to these companies and you're like, man, they just don't get it? Or, I think we're seeing more and more examples of people doing it right, but there's still a lot of people that I feel like haven't quite wrapped their head around B2B commerce, and they're kind of still going through the old ways of doing things and haven't really adapted.
I think the biggest thing that I see is being creative, right? I think there is no reason why a B2B business shouldn't be able to be creative and innovative. And I think a lot of these B2B companies want to be innovative and creative, and they want to be able to take advantage of the same tool sets that B2C businesses use. And so I think where they'll go wrong is not being willing to migrate to these platforms that just make running your business easier, right? Or not being willing to use what have generally been thought of as consumer-facing tools, like a Klaviyo, right, or a Lever, and not adopting those technologies and using the similar game plans to create more personal and engaging experiences for their buyers. It's still like, whether it's a consumer buying a new pair of shoes or a wholesaler buying, next month's season, it's still a person making the transaction, right? And people like to have cool experiences. And so even though the size of the sale, what someone's buying may be different, it's still an individual person that's buying the product, right? And making the transaction decision, and experiences that are really good make those, help those transactions go faster. They provide more information. I mean, I think that we tend to separate B2B and B2C into these two separate silos. And yeah, like they do need some like different tool sets, but at the end of the day, like the transaction's still being initiated by a person. And people make purchasing decisions for themselves and for their businesses in similar ways.
Yeah, what I would say too is, and we talk about that with a lot of our guests on the podcast. I mean, it's kind of interesting that for years it really wasn't the case. It felt like it was the other world. B2B was the other world. But really, a lot of the folks who work in B2B today just won't put up with that, right? They're on social media, they're on their iPhones, they want to be using, everything that they use in their regular life, in order to do B2B e-commerce, or just, whatever that means, right? So I completely agree with you in that. The expectations have changed, and really, other than things like payment processing or whatever has to happen for B2B transactions, it shouldn't be that ridiculously different on the experience side. The experience should be easy, frictionless, visually engaging, and all of these things that we want on B2C. It should be the same on B2B.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of that. I mean, you see that a lot in SaaS now, right? And if you are a SaaS business going to acquire, or not acquire, but going to find another SaaS product, I mean, think about how engaging those experiences are now. I mean, if you're going to think about how much like effort someone like, bring up Klaviyo or Yapo or Attentive.
They have incredible marketing. Yeah, I'm very jealous of their. I'm very jealous of their marketing teams, because they have so much like resources poured into that. And, we do our best, but we don't have that.
Right. But I think like you see that investment because, again, like people want to make informed decisions, whether they're buying for themselves or buying for their business. And so those experiences have to be first class, right? They can't be, you can't let that let that experience get degraded if you're just because you're selling to a business, right? That doesn't make any sense.
I think one of our previous guests brought on a really good point, which is that the buying cycle has now shifted down the funnel. So, if I'm buying email marketing, there's a good chance that I've already looked at Klaviyo, looked at MailChimp, done research, looked at white papers, so people have the access to so much more information, and it's easy to talk to someone on LinkedIn and get a recommendation. So I think people are, when they're actually ready to buy or closer to buying, they're way more educated now. And if you're not part of that education process, or that maybe a more immersive process with a cool 3D image or 3D product, you're just losing out on so much business. And I think the problem is people are over indexing on trying to track everything. It's very hard to track every little interaction of how that process happens, because some of it's just like, oh, I listened to a podcast. How are you going to track that they listen to our podcast? We talked about Klaviyo. Klaviyo is not a sponsor of this podcast. Like, they are a partner of Trellis, but like, we have no agenda to sell Klaviyo. We've been talking about it a lot.
But if they would like to be sponsors.
Maybe someone might go buy Klaviyo because they listen to this podcast and they're like, oh shit, I need email marketing. And it's like, how you know what I'm saying? Like,
well, yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you generate good tool sets that are easy to use. You generate a lot of momentum. I mean, a lot of SaaS purchases, and I don't know I don't know exactly how much of this like plays into the B2B space too, or B2B retail space, but like, momentum, or, building momentum because you have a good product and getting referrals and word of mouth traffic. I mean, that is such a huge thing, right? And I think it's, when we think about kind of some of the work that we're doing in the B2C space specifically, I think it's less than 1% of retailers have augmented reality on their sites right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to be a unique brand and drive a better experience, right? This is one of the ways you can be unique. It won't be like that forever, right? Like, eventually 75% of brands are going to have augmented reality or 3D models. It's going to get there.
I think eventually it's just like, everyone has images, everyone's going to have a 3D model, right? It's like, it's just one more.
They don't even have video yet, though. See, that's the thing. That I was talking with somebody about this topic recently. It's like, well, guys, you don't even have video yet. It's like, what are you doing, right? So it's amazing to me how, like, people really, they know it works and they know it can, it's accessible, but they still haven't done it. So I really believe you, though, Daniel, when you're saying like 75%. I really believe it'll be something like that. But it's strange that it hasn't moved even faster, given that it's not expensive, that there is clear ROI, that it can set you apart from the competition, all of these wins.
Yeah,
well, to me, it's like
that hasn't been true for that long. I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that generally over the last, I would say, 3 years, we've come a long way just as an industry. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of businesses who aren't using Lever, this is super expensive and super disjointed and very difficult to do. Yeah. And I think, a task for us is helping to educate retailers and let them know that, hey, using a platform like Lever, it makes this easy and it drives value. And I think when we get on the phone with folks and start to talk about that, and they realize that this isn't hard and it's not expensive, like, they jump at the idea. Isaiah, you gave me a reference to an agency the other day who I was chatting with, and we got on the phone with them, and the first thing that he said was like, I just don't think our clients can afford this. And so we walked through our pricing and the effort that a client has to put in to get there.
He was like, holy shit.
And he's like, well, I'll retract that. Like, it is affordable. This is super interesting. And I think there's just because it's cool and it's cutting edge, it seems expensive, right? Yeah, but at the end of the day, we get people started, easily for a few $100 a month, right? Like, that's like many businesses on Shopify can get started for a few hundred, or BigCommerce can get started.
It reminds me a little bit of like you said with Klaviyo. It's like, there was a point where probably not many people were doing like abandoned cart and all these things because they couldn't afford Bronto and Pardot, and those things were like 10 grand a month subscriptions, and you need like a marketing operations engineer type person to like set it up, and it's And then Klaviyo came out, and now, like you said, 85% of people on Shopify are using it because it's so like you could literally do it yourself. You don't need an engineer to set up Klaviyo. Like you can do it
Right.
without any technical.
Same thing for us, right? We want you to have to do no dev work. We don't want you to have to, you don't have to ship us your products, right? We can use your photos. It's all about being lightweight, easy to use, and look really good, right? It's important that it also look really good.
So let me ask you one other quick number, see if you have this handy. I don't know if you do, but like, let's say a pre-lever top product page versus a post-lever implementation product page. Like, what changes? Like, how much does conversion go up? I mean, how does that work for a lot of people that you've worked with?
Yeah, no, and it varies by kind of like product type and industry. But what I would say is when people engage with the 3D experience or the AR experience on a product page, they are 1 to 2 times more likely to add the product to their cart. We see that kind of like across the board with almost all of our customers. When people engage with the 3D or AR experience, they generally spend 4 to 5 times longer with the product. Right. And so what we're seeing is that when people engage, they spend more time with it, they're more comfortable transacting. And even though they may be spending more time with the product, they're converting at a faster rate. So that is what we are seeing across the board with our customers. And now I think our main objective with the customers we already have and the new customers we're bringing on is how do we get more and more people to activate the experience, whether it's using the activation through email and SMS, marketing the fact that your brand allows people to shop in 3D or AR. Those types of things, if we can get more and more people, a higher percentage of folks that visit the product page or that engage with the brand in the 3D experience, those add to cart increases and the time on site increase or time with the product increase is going to start to really have a meaningful impact on revenue. And I think, it's just part of like the consumer learning curve. Like if you've never engaged with 3D or AR before, like you may see that activation on the site, but not know what to do.
Yeah,
right?
it's like self-checkout, right? It's like, I remember I didn't know how to use self-checkout when it first came out. I was like, it took me a while to kind of get comfortable with it. And now it's like, I don't think I've checked out not using self-checkout at the Target near my house in like years.
Yeah.
It's so easy, but in the beginning when it first came out, I didn't feel super comfortable with it because I was like, oh, if I'm like fumbling with it, I can't figure it out. It's like, you don't want to waste a bunch of time. But, 5-10 years ago was like much different than it is now,
Yeah. No, that's a great example. That is a perfect reference for it, right?
We should give you the chance to kind of wrap things up because I know time is important. So Dan, what sort of things should we know about Lever that maybe we didn't bring up, or did we do a good job for our listeners? Like what else do you think?
Yeah, no, I think first of all, this has been great. I mean, for those of you that know me, like I love talking about this kind of stuff because I think it's really exciting. And I love e-commerce, I love the space, and I think that being innovative in that space drives a bunch of value for small businesses who are trying to compete with the Amazons and Targets of the world, which those businesses serve a purpose, but like we should be empowering retailers and B2B businesses to compete with those folks. And I think things like Lever help those guys compete. But I guess like my final thoughts on this are, we love working with all sorts of brands that want to experiment and create cool experiences that drive value. And so whether it makes sense to put the 3D experience on your product page, to add our spotlight experience, which is like, you can click on different components of the product and have a immersive visual experience, whether it's a web AR experience where you scan a QR code and engage with the packaging. We are all about learning from our customers and the partners that we have to iterate on our product and make it better and more valuable. And so I think like the biggest thing is, if you have felt that augmented reality or 3D product visualization has been too expensive, too much work, isn't worth the time, is on the back burner. Like, now is the time to reach out to someone like Lever and engage and learn about it and figure out how you can use this new tool, which is obviously very engaging, and put it to work to add value, just like you did when you decided that email was going to be important, or that a better fulfillment strategy was going to be important, right? Or SMS has been important. Like, now is the time to go and experiment. You know, you've got whatever 6 months before the holidays. It's time to to really buy in and try these things out and see where they offer value. And we love doing that with folks at scale, one-offs, with agency partners. So I'd say, like, that's the most fun thing about being at Lever, is being able to do that work with folks and being creative. So, we're looking for the opportunity to work with more and more folks on that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. That was great, and I think our listeners have a lot to soak up here. Another great episode, Isaiah.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think I'll leave it with one last thing. I think that you said it really, it engages people more, and people spend, what did you say, 4 or 5 times more on the product page when they see the 3D, and it just kind of made me think, like, all that's really happening is you're baking a better retail experience when it's on the website. And you think about stores, they try and keep you in the store, right? Walgreens is trying to, like, make these wellness centers. Watch the Theranos thing. The whole reason they got Theranos is to try and keep people in the store, which gets them to buy more stuff. The more you can keep them on the website, the more likely they are to buy stuff, right? It's kind of the same concept, just digitally, right?
Good experiences drive a lot of value.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a great tagline. Good experiences drive a lot of value.
Maybe that's your tagline there for your market.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Bye.